From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. On the day after Labor Day, to me, this is one of the bigger days of the year, the day after Labor Day. I think it rivals New Year's Day in regard to the whole, New Year, fresh start, new things, maybe even bigger than New Year's Day. I mean, that's kind of the meaning of New Year's Day, the turning of the new year and all that, looking ahead. But what really changes after you go back from the holidays? You still got a couple months left of winter. You're still, nothing's really changed. As opposed to Labor Day, then that kicks off football season, which is a big thing in the culture. Kids are back in school. In the old days, it used to be a new TV season, and to some extent, that's still true. There are a lot of premieres for those who get their entertainment that way. Coming into the heat of the pennant race and into the Major League Baseball League playoffs and World Series, again, back to the sports, the culture thing. It just feels like a real turning of the page from summer into fall. I mean, sure, it's kind of cliche. Every turning of the season has its own special characteristics. But I don't know, this one just seems to stand out above the rest. There's also a bit of a controversy because there are summer people and there are fall people. I'm more of a fall person. But the people who are devoted to summer, and the hotter the better. And, of course, I can see the upside of summer. Have a summer vacation, go to the beach on the weekends, the weather's nice for the most part. But then there's the other type of person, which, again, I align myself more closely with. Summer can be kind of oppressive and kind of long and kind of hot and kind of humid and kind of sticky and kind of unpleasant. And I personally don't like to use air conditioning if I don't have to, because I'd rather have fresh air. I mean, let's be honest. Air-conditioned air and fresh air are very different air. But sometimes you got to bite the bullet. Sometimes it gets just really hot, especially for, oh my gosh, older folks or people with respiratory conditions. You can't be having that hot, humid weather. It's really hurtful. So, sometimes you have to turn on the air conditioning. So there's that. And then fall comes, and the things I mentioned before, and I didn't mention the biggest of all, the turning of the weather gets a little cooler, gets a little breezy. Of course, the leaves change color and all that beautiful, sentimental stuff. Yeah, I'll confess I'm more of a fall person. But the controversy between fall people and summer people. It's kind of like city folks and country folks. Just can never quite find common ground there, common cause. So yeah, it's Labor Day. Well, one of the turning points of summer into fall is also campaign season. Now, we're lucky this year because it's an off year. 2022, a year from today, will be a big kickoff to the real, you're going to see the ads on television. It's going to get crazy for the midterms. Now, of course, it starts a lot earlier than that. People are out campaigning and making news. But yeah, when summer's over, that August recess is over, and everybody's back to work and back to school, and the calendar page turns, we'll see it this time next year. Speaking of respiratory conditions, as I was just a second ago, there were some preliminary studies on this, but now some more comprehensive research coming out of British Columbia, Canada. Wildfire smoke supercharges the coronavirus. Research in British Columbia and beyond finds that soot in the air makes the pandemic more dangerous. I need to correct myself. The story comes out of British Columbia. The research comes out of Harvard. All right, corrected. The United Nations is calling this unprecedented territory, and this Harvard researcher calling it a very dangerous combination. That is the wildfire smoke and COVID. Marshall Burke, a Stanford expert on wildfire smoke, described the intensity and duration of dirty air in the western United States as a first-order concern. First-order concern. It is going to be the most important impact of climate change felt by millions of Americans and Canadians, he said. Smoke will be the rude face of climate change that most people encounter, at least here in the continental West. It will be on par with heat waves, said Burke. Sarah Henderson, a senior scientist at the BC Centre for Disease Control, signaled the threat last summer in the American Journal of Public Health, writing that the pandemic was about to collide with the North American West's extended wildfire season thanks to hotter temperatures. And smoke, as you know, travels far. It's a pretty clear day in Milwaukee. I'm looking at the skyline as we speak. But I've had lots and lots of days as I look out on my beloved city, and I see it through a mist of smoke coming all the way from Canada and from the West. Smoke has been shown to increase everyone's susceptibility to viral infections, including influenza. Experts warn that wildfires could fill the air with clouds of particulate matter and amplify the pandemic. Just a moderate season of wildfires, driven by climate change, had the potential to increase the impact of COVID-19 outbreak by approximately 10%. Just last week, a group of Harvard researchers released a study that actually tested that hypothesis. They pored over COVID statistics, wildfire data, and particulate levels for 92 counties in Oregon, California, and Washington during last year's fire season. What they found: wherever particulate matter on average rose by 10 micrograms per cubic meter each day over a 28-day period, the rate much of British Columbia and Alberta have recently experienced, COVID cases increased by an average of 11% and deaths by nearly 9%. All right, so you get the picture. A deadly combination, COVID-19 and climate change, specifically in the form of wildfire smoke. So here we are, kids. We're living right here in the smack dab middle of it. It's not 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 years from now. It's happening as we speak. Damn, Hurricane Ida barrels across an entire nation, and by the time it got to New York, there were rainfalls and winds that were equivalent to the rainfall and winds that hit the coast down in New Orleans. Sometimes even more severe. 13 people died. That's the last count I saw. In New York City. What more do we have to see here, you guys? It's crazy. It's ridiculous. We're living in the dystopia we feared. We're looking at and breathing the smoke. The rain's coming down. The heat's coming down. We got drought here and flood there. And it's a scientific consensus, whether you dopey friends from high school want to believe it or not. It's a scientific consensus that these are all the results of rapidly progressing climate change. And then on top of that, we've got political disasters that are almost as bad. We got Republican state legislatures all over the country trying to strip people of voting rights, strip women of their human rights. Yeah, talk about a deadly combination. Pandemics, climate change, fascist uprisings right here in the United States. Which brings me, I guess, ought to bring me to this. I hope you're planning for the October 15th general strike. If you're not, if you're just hearing about this, here's the story. National General Strike, October 15th, 2021. Let me go ahead and just read you from the website here. They'll say it better than I can. What is a general strike? A general strike is a strike action in which a substantial proportion of the total labor force in a city, region, or country participates. General strikes are characterized by the participation of workers in a multitude of workplaces and tend to involve entire communities. Which is a good point here. I'm not a joiner. I'm a bit of a loner, but I don't recommend it. In order for anything like this to work, you have to get organized. So within your workplace, within your union, if you have one, in alliance with other unions, other workplaces, other organizations, you got to get together. This has to be organized in order for it to have any impact. General strikes first occurred in the mid-19th century and have characterized many historically important strikes. True. Not so much in the United States. We have a hard time with this concept. There haven't really been any important general strikes in this country for about 100 years, notwithstanding last year's so-called essential workers strike, which, if you look it up, it gets a little space. I'm not sure how much good it did. It made the news. It makes the history books, but beyond that, I'm not sure. Anyway, okay, back to the website. Why strike? The U.S. government is not serving its people. Here are the items listed by the Octoberstrike.com. The United States is the only developed country that requires 0 paid time off for maternity leave. Unemployment rose to 14% in 2021 because companies refused to raise wages. Those numbers have shifted a little bit in recent weeks, I'm happy to say. Not enough to call off the strike. Only 100 corporations are responsible for 71% of all global carbon emissions. Federal minimum wage hasn't been raised since 2009. Saw probably lots of posts over the Labor Day weekend. At least I hope you did. I hope you have those kinds of friends and acquaintances in social media where you get those kind of posts. One of them shows a chart where it's literally a mirror image as union representation goes down, top 1% wealth goes up. And the chart is really astounding. It's pretty much, the lines on the graph are exactly mirror images of each other. It's really something. And the other post this item reminded me of, if the minimum wage had risen over the years equal to that of increased production, in other words, what workers are putting out, if that had been the case, the current minimum wage would be over $24 an hour. Like $24 plus an hour. Only by keeping up with productivity. So those productivity gains go somewhere, obviously. Don't have to tell you where they go. Yeah, if they were going to the workers, since the last raise of the minimum wage, still $7.50 an hour, which is tragically, comically bizarre. Yeah, $24 an hour minimum wage today. All right, 40 million Americans live at or below the national poverty line, inexcusable. Pharmaceutical companies are extorting patients for medications. Yep, still not allowed to negotiate for lower prices through Medicare. And the average American is $90,460 in debt just to afford basic necessities like housing, food, clothes, education, and medical bills. That's a figure that's just hard to believe. Of course, it includes mortgages. People have mortgages on homes, and that's part of their debt. They see it as an investment, and in some cases it is, but still. $90,460 in debt. That's the average. In an effort to combat this tyranny, we propose... So, they cast a wide net. There are plenty of things you could add to this. But generally, if you want to just knock it down to its most basic points, workers are getting screwed, the owner class is raking it in. And we got to do something about it. Legislatively, legally. You can't just wish upon a star. You can't hold up your fist and demand. No. Governments with power have to make laws. There's another post you may have seen over the weekend. It happened. We see them every Labor Day. If you like the weekend, if you like the 8-hour day, if you like overtime pay, if you like vacation days or paid holidays, sick leave, safety regulations, if you like all of these things, thank the unions. Yeah, it's always a good point. They run the list of the benefits gained over the years, and unions are responsible for agitating, for demanding all of them. But what the Post doesn't say, I think is also worth saying. Yes, the unions demanded it, but it required lawmakers to put their names in either the aye or the nay column. Men and women had to stand up and vote and make law, write it down on paper in triplicate. These have to be laws. None of this can happen without legislation. So, the general strike is October 15th. Start making your plans right now. Continuing to read here. In an effort to combat this tyranny, we propose a national strike starting on October 15th, 2021. Keyword here, starting. Don't know how long it's going to last. We'll see. We'll see how the organizing goes. It could be a day, it could be 2, it could be 10, it could be 20. We don't know. While the struggle continues, maybe you have no choice. You have to work to support your family. Everybody understands that. Not everybody can make the ultimate sacrifice here. But then it becomes an evening and weekend thing. We'll see how much commitment we can get to it. This demonstration serves to show your company and our country as a whole that you deserve basic human rights. Your labor is a bargaining tool, and you are worth more than what society is offering you. Couldn't be more true. Our labor, all of our labor, each one of us individually, it's a bargaining tool. And when we come together and withdraw that labor, it can be very powerful. Going hand in hand with the general strike, although they don't mention it here, I always like to mention from the consumer side, right? The labor side of the thing, we're talking about the input, the production, the selling of stuff. But the other side of the equation is just as important, absolutely. That's the consumption side. So we have production, we have consumption. On the production side is the strike. On the consumption side is the boycott. Now, I'm calling for that all the damn time. We got to boycott everything we don't need. And especially boycott the corporations. We got to get to the greatest extent possible, as much as possible. We have to consume the goods and services we need on a local basis, as much as possible. Reduce as much as you can, but then you got to have what you got to have. You got to have food, you got to have shelter, you got to have stuff. I know we need stuff. To the greatest extent you're able, boycott every corporation and consume locally. So that's my personal call as well. Let's add a boycott element to this. All right, goals according to Octoberstrike.com. Our goals: 25% corporate tax rate, no loopholes. That's a pretty modest goal. That's a very modest goal. Just a couple years ago, it was 28%. And back in the day, it was way over 50, back in the Eisenhower days. Free health care for all. 12 weeks paid paternity and maternity leave. Of course, drag the United States into the 20th century with every other developed nation. $20 minimum wage. I'm very happy to see that. I'm tired of the $15 minimum wage. It's way not enough. It's got to be 20, and it's got to be tied. They don't get into a lot of specifics here. These are all bullet point stuff. But for my money, the minimum wage must be tied to the cost of living. If they want to make it a little more complicated, I'm fine with that. If they want to have different minimum wages in different regions because of cost of living, it costs less to live in Fayetteville, Arkansas than it does to live in New York City. I understand that. I'm okay with making a little formula if it's just a little bit complicated. If each region has a different minimum wage based on the cost of living in that region, I'd be fine with that. I like to keep things simple. I like to keep laws as simple as possible. But that's not that complicated. You could do that without that much trouble. All right, so what's next here? $20 minimum wage, a 4-day work week. That might sound radical to you. All good ideas sound radical. 4-day work week is also a no-brainer. I don't care what you think right now. I don't care what your initial reaction to this is. I guarantee you, mark my words, in another few months or a year or a couple of years, you're going to see that and go, oh, of course. I guarantee it. If you don't feel that way already, as I do. Next bullet point, our goals: stricter environmental regulations on corporations, bans on single-use and microplastics, and limited emissions. Yeah, again, these are bullet points only. They don't get into detail, but we got to get very, very serious right now, yesterday, about the climate crisis. It's at the top. It should be at the top of everybody's list. And emergency situations. Every world leader on the planet, every governor of this country, every mayor, every town council, everybody has to declare an emergency, an urgent emergency right now, today. And as I said earlier, get busy on passing laws. No more blue ribbon commissions, no more studies, no more talk. We have the technology. We know how to fix this. We just have to decide to do it. We have to take the power out of the hands of the 1% income-wise, out of the hands of the CEOs, and put the power squarely into the hands of the people through their elected representatives. And they got to write some damn laws, and they got to do it today. Not tomorrow, not a month from now, not 10 years from now. Right now. Cancel your plans and start writing some damn legislation. We are in an emergency. A third of the country's on fire, a third of the country's underwater, and the rest of us are waiting for the next disaster or falling prey to the residue of the current disasters. So for my money, I'm putting climate crisis right at the top of the list for my reasons for October 15th. By the way, if you're curious, October 15th is a Friday. Let's put a day on that. Yeah, so it's a work day. It's a school day. It's a Friday. Greta Thunberg, a couple of years ago now, this is going on for, how long has she been doing her Friday school strikes? Yeah, every week, every Friday now for a couple, 3 years she's been on this. So it can be a recurring Friday thing. It can be an early start to a nice weekend full of agitation and marches and organizing and learning and speaking. So, yeah, mark your calendars. Friday, October 15th. Let's stretch it into the weekend. And if we get enough momentum, enough strength, enough mutual aid to support each other through this October 15th general strike, carry it right through the next week. Let's put some real heat on the powers that be. The gears grind to a halt without us. You guys know that, don't you? I mean, you must know that by now. I don't know how to convince you if you're not convinced of that. They need us. We do not need them. This is not a reciprocal arrangement by any stretch of the imagination. They need us. If you support any or all of our goals, stand in solidarity with us on October 15th by taking off work. Here's what you can do. A few more bullet points. Abstain from going into work starting on October 15th. Again, there's that starting word. We don't know if and how this can last. It'd be great if it could last for a bit. Do not participate in economic activity starting on October 15th. All right, this gets into what I was talking about earlier, the boycott side of this equation. Do not participate in any economic activity starting on October 15th. Now, everybody has their own threshold of how radical they're able to get. But that means no economic activity. That means you don't pay your rent. That means you don't pay your bills. Yeah, you can get in trouble. And this is where we rely on organization, especially that takes the form of mutual aid. So we need funds. We need support. We need mutual support. We need mutual aid so that we can withdraw from economic activity. Now, I know this is hard. I'm not pretending for a second that this is easy. And I know, as I said before, everybody has different levels to which they can commit. I certainly understand that. This is only an invitation. I know it sounds like a command. I command you to do this. Well, I hope you do. I hope you participate in every way you can. And I hope you make it as radical as you can. But everybody has a different level. Everybody has different needs. A lot of people don't have any savings. They don't have any mutual support. I understand that. I got nothing but love for all working people. I'm asking you to be a part of this in any way you can. You decide what that is. And I'm really hoping that groups and organizations can come together to provide aid for people. Strikers need support. Strikers need food on their table, right? So let's get together. Question, will I get fired? Good question. The law provides some protection for striking workers. Companies fire people for illegal reasons all the time. So please use caution and your own discretion when disclosing to your employer. The NLRA, that's the National Labor Relations Act, protects your right to strike even if you are not a union member because you are engaging in a concerted activity. Companies have tried to retaliate before, and it doesn't look good for them. For those of you who still express concerns, there's a link on this site I'm looking at, Basic Guide to the National Labor Relations Act. And there's more information, more links. Please contact the National Labor Relations Board to find out more about your unique situation. Question: what if I absolutely cannot take off? You can still support the movement by spreading the word through the links below, and there are more links. Okay, so speaking of links, I will definitely put this onto my Facebook page, Charles Purcell. National General Strike, October 15th, 2021. Spread the word, get involved. It's time. It's absolutely time. There's no more screwing around here. We're moving way too slow relative to the speed at which catastrophes are piling up. So, check out the Facebook page. I'll share this link along with this episode. All right, there it is. Speaking of Facebook, you are invited, as you always are, to find me there and on Twitter and reach out. I love to hear from you. This episode is available right now wherever you find your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Please leave a comment, or even better, share the podcast. That's how we really get out there, when you share it. Speaking of sharing, thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. And while we're handing out thank yous, thank you to Peter Donalds, who composed and performed our theme song. All right, there you go. Forward. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.